welcome back. As we heard earlier, the government's considering a ban on transgender pupils attending single-sex schools. I'm still joined by Salma Shah and John McTiernan, and I'd like to know whether you have a take on that. I mean, we spoke earlier on the programme to he had said originally his pronouns were he, but now he's non-binary, so he's kind of changed it, but I could still call him he. But he just felt that this was a kind of unkind, discourteous, kind of, I suppose, uncongenial and possibly, very divisive way of behaving. Hurtful, exactly.
So these are the kinds of things where I think it's so difficult for government just to say we're going to have a blanket ban, because actually it's about individuals and it's about choices
and school communities
and them making the choices together in a considered way. This is not the same thing as J.K. Rowling talking about female protected spaces for vulnerable women. This is a separate discussion. It's about young people who are probably going through a very difficult time in their life and trying to understand what is best for them. And
they're don't know what for support and love and kindness. They're not looking for a harsh rule that just goes in and out.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is where I get very nervous about governments deciding what you can have, what you can't, and doing blanket bans on things. Mm-hmm. It's about the individual.
Mm. But is it about the individual, or is it about the individual school, or is it about all schools towing the same line?
I agree with Salma that I think the government isn't very good at subtle. Government sometimes not very good at crude either. I mean, government does big things, and sometimes does big things well and big things badly. This is getting into the details of individuals' lives, individual school community lives, and communities that the schools are in. And there'll be all sets of conversations within those communities, within those schools. And the pupils in the schools will have views. And in my experience, the younger you get in terms of the conversation around this, the more open and tolerant and kind and caring are the thoughts that come from young men and young women talking about their peers who are trans, their peers who are non-binary, their peers who are transitioning or thinking about the situation. I think being a teenager is tough enough with everything that's going on. For government to set some rules out in Whitehall and say this applies to everybody in England, I think it just doesn't seem right, and I suspect it won't feel right to the school leaders and to the school communities.
Do you think the government thinks somehow that this is some kind of vote winner?
I think that on the trans issue and on general political issues, people think that if they have these culture war battles that somehow they're sitting on one side of the fence, and actually all they're doing is annoying people who'd rather that government stuck their nose out of individual businesses and got on with kind of like growing the economy or doing something that governments are actually supposed to do. Now, that is a personal view of mine. I don't pretend that I speak on behalf of the nation, but I do think that governments need to get serious about what actually matters to people. And for my 2 cents, I don't think this is it.
And I think the other side of that is one of the things we found out during the pandemic was actually how community-spirited people were to each other and support each other in community. Also how much people cared about trying to protect each other from disease and transmitting disease. And that's all about unifying. And these kind of things seem to have the intent of division, that the point isn't. At the heart of this are young men and young women, young people. And this isn't about making them feel better. It's about making adults angry about the situation. And if you get people angry, you're dividing the country. And if you're dividing the country, I just don't think that helps anybody. And I'd actually agree with some. I don't think it helps the politicians either. I think they falsely believe there's a huge audience out there for getting angry about culture war issues, which will mobilise votes. I think if governments stick to their knitting, stick to what they're meant to do, get the transport running, get the economy growing, get the childcare policy sorted out so it doesn't bankrupt nurseries, get things done correctly, do your own job, and then go.
But look, if we were talking about single-sex spaces where vulnerable women were concerned, especially those who've come out of situations of domestic abuse and things like that, I would be taking a much more hardline position on where the government should be. So this is about the very specific thing.
This is about children in school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
exactly
the point here, isn't it?
The school should be a safe place for all children.
Exactly.
This is about children in school, and I think it's very important that we remember that. And I certainly know any programmes I've ever presented over the last 30 years involving trans people, they have always said that they had no choice whatsoever. And if they hadn't been able to do what they did, they would have had to end their lives. It's been a case of such abject despair leading to what they've been through and what they've gone through that you wouldn't want in any way to thwart people who are having such a troubled time, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Just on sort of compassionate, decent human grounds. All you want really is for people to flourish in the best way that they can flourish, as far as I can see. And I hope you've done that on the show today. It feels as if you've been here for several years. You've given opinions on every single